Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. It was a sunny morning at the private airport of a major U.S. city. The atmosphere was calm, punctuated by the distant drone of private jets. In the main hall, a wealthy, arrogant, and self-assured airline dealer observed the visitors with a haughty air. A black farmer, modest but clearly prosperous, approached the counter with a broad smile and documents in hand. He had just realized his lifelong dream, buying a private jet to expand his agricultural business internationally. But the dealer, seeing his unassuming appearance and skin color, couldn't hide his contempt. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" he snapped with a sarcastic grin. "This kind of toy isn't for people like you." The farmer remained calm, but his gaze reflected a quiet determination. He knew that his success wasn't measured by his appearance but by his hard work. After a brief, humiliating exchange, the car dealer turned on his heel, convinced he had put the visitor in his place. A few minutes later, while reviewing the buyer's file, he discovered with horror that he had humiliated the owner of one of the country's largest farms, a billionaire and influential philanthropist whose name was on everyone's lips among investors and the media. His face flushed red. Pride and arrogance turned to searing shame. What had begun as a simple act of prejudice was about to backfire on him in the most spectacular way possible. The farmer, named Malik Thompson, entered the lobby with quiet confidence. Dressed simply but with a natural presence, he carried his financial documents and the contract prepared for the purchase of the jet. Each step echoed in the luxurious lobby, a silent reminder that wealth is not measured by clothing but by actions. The dealer, Richard Connors, a gray-haired man with overt arrogance, greeted him with a condescending smile. "Welcome. I suppose you're here to watch," he said, his tone betraying a mixture of surprise and disdain. Malik placed his file on the counter. "No, I'm here to buy. Here's my contract and my bank details." Richard burst into mocking laughter. "You? Buy a jet?" He gestured vaguely, looking down at his plain clothes. "You know, those planes cost millions. They're not really for everyone." Malik didn't reply immediately. He observed Richard calmly, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. But there was an intensity in his eyes that made the dealer uneasy. "Well, if you insist, I suppose we can take a look. But I'm warning you, there are a lot of formalities you might not understand." As Richard led Malik toward the newest jet on display in the hangar, he began to speak condescendingly, explaining every detail as if he were addressing a child. Malik nodded politely, noting each detail with meticulous attention. Then came the moment to sign the final documents. Richard, thinking he had the upper hand, made a cruel remark in front of his assistant. "You know, I've never seen a farmer buy a jet, especially a farmer like him." Malik put down his pen, turned to Richard and said calmly, "You know what's funny? You judged me before even checking who I am. And it's never a good idea to judge someone by their appearance." Richard laughed nervously, thinking it was a harmless comment. But a few moments later, his phone vibrated. He checked a message from his manager. "Malik Thompson, private jet payment confirmation, owner of one of the largest agricultural operations in the United States, philanthropy and national influence." Richard's face turned ashen. Everything he had said and thought up to this point had just backfired. A heavy, awkward silence fell. Malik smiled slightly, a sign that the story wasn't over yet. Richard Connors froze, unable to utter a word. His arrogance had just crumbled in a fraction of a second. The dealer had humiliated someone he thought was ordinary, but who was in reality one of the most influential figures in the agricultural and business sectors in the United States. Malik, calm and composed, observed Richard's reaction. He knew this moment of truth would hurt more than any insult he could have suffered. With a slight smile, he held out the pen again. "You can sign here, now. I suppose you understand better than I do how important it is to treat every customer with respect." Richard, red with shame and trembling slightly, signed the papers without a word. Each signature reminded him of his mistake and his past arrogance. The employees in the hangar had begun to murmur amongst themselves, some exchanging surprised and amused glances. The news began to spread quickly through the team. The man they had judged had just paid millions for the most expensive jet at the show. Once the formalities were completed, Malik placed his hand on the counter and said calmly, "I'm not here to humiliate anyone. But I wanted to show you that judging someone before knowing their story can cost you dearly, and above all, cost you your dignity." Richard nodded, unable to find a suitable response. He knew he had just experienced a moment of public humiliation he would remember for a long time. The murmurs of the employees soon turned into stifled laughter and knowing glances at Malik. Before leaving for his new jet, Malik turned around one last time. True wealth is not measured by clothes or the opinions of others, but by work, integrity, and perseverance. You should think about that. Richard stood there, motionless, watching the jet disappear into the distance, filled with a mixture of shame, regret, and a harsh lesson learned. That day, his arrogance had been punished, and Malik had proven, silently but powerfully, that respect and success are never measured by appearances. Shortly after the encounter, the employees present in the barn couldn't resist sharing the scene on social media. The video, captured discreetly by a smartphone, showed Richard Connors humiliating Malik, followed by the farmer's icy and calm reaction when he revealed his true identity. Within hours, the video went viral. Thousands of people commented, shared, and laughed at the car dealer's arrogance. Local and national media picked up the story, a wealthy and influential man humiliated by racial prejudice, and Malik's silent but brilliant revenge. Richard quickly became a symbol of arrogance and unconscious racism. Hashtags exploded on social media, #RespectLesson, #humiliation in the hangar, #don't judge by appearances. Richard's companies and partners began distancing themselves from him, and he was forced to issue a public apology, stammering out phrases that sounded hollow and forced. Meanwhile, Malik, discreet but resolute, chose not to further humiliate his former interlocutor. Instead, he made an inspiring post on his social media. True wealth is not measured by possessions, but by how you treat others. Every person has a story. Respect it. The message resonated with millions of people across the country. It sparked discussions about discrimination, respect, and how we perceive others. Malik became a symbol of quiet success and dignity, demonstrating that humility and hard work always triumph over arrogance and prejudice. Richard, for his part, remained marked by this lesson. He understood that the humiliation he had inflicted was not limited to that day, but now resonated publicly, reminding him at every moment that one should never judge a book by its cover. And so, a simple act of prejudice transformed into a global lesson in respect, humility, and quiet justice. Malik boarded his jet, ready to conquer the world, while Richard watched, ashamed but changed, aware that some lessons are never forgotten. A few weeks after the incident, Malik and Richard's story continued to circulate in the media. Interviews, articles, and videos highlighted not only the dealer's arrogance, but above all, Malik's integrity and discretion. Malik used this media attention wisely. He announced the launch of a training and support program for young farmers and entrepreneurs from modest backgrounds, reminding everyone that success comes from perseverance, not social status or appearance. His image transformed from that of a simple farmer into an inspiring and respected figure throughout the country. As for Richard, he was forced to rethink how he treated his clients. Business partnerships began to slip away, and he had to watch helplessly as the man he had humiliated rose to power. His initial arrogance had transformed into a forced and lasting humility. Every time he thought about the incident, a mixture of shame and a lesson learned brought him back to reality. Judging someone before knowing their story can be very costly. Malik, for his part, continued on his path, always discreet but powerful in his influence. Every time he arrived at a new airport for business, the employees and concessionaires recognized him. His story had become a symbol of quiet success, respect, and karmic justice. The moral of the story resonated throughout the country. Never judge someone by their appearance. True greatness lies in integrity, hard work, and the respect one shows to others. And so, what had begun as a moment of humiliation ended in a silent but brilliant victory for Malik, and an unforgettable lesson for Richard and for all those who believed that wealth or social status justified contempt for others.